So we will begin this morning session. And first of all, we have to excuse Marilou because she had personal issues and she had to come back to home. So she thanks everyone for this meeting. And now we will begin with Alexis Gorg and his presentation. The Institution of Exchange in Western Mediterranean. Donc en français, les institutions de l'échange dans le bassin méditerranéen occidental. Merci Alexis.
Well, merci Eneko. Thank you all. I'm sorry for the French. I'm sorry for everyone. Indeed, I will speak in English, which will allow me for not being understood by no one, which is the best way for not being criticized. So, first, I would like to thank the organizer for the invitation to present what is kind of a synthesis of a part of my research these last 10 to 15 years, maybe. So originally I have planned to try my hand at a large synthesis encompassing southern Spain and Italy, but I gave up because it was too big a challenge. And I gave up not just because it was too difficult, but also because I think that focusing in a fairly small region actually allows to characterize with accuracy some processes you cannot describe or see at a bigger scale. And then you can see if you can apply your observation to other regions. So I'm kind of following Ordens and Purcell's trace and looking for a small micro region of the Mediterranean that is this part more or less between the Rhone, mainly the Hérault, indeed, river, and the Ebro, the Mediterranean part of it. And I will treat all the time span between the late Bronze Age and the end of the Middle Iron Age, so more or less between 1000 BCE and 2000 BCE. I will try to stay out Félix and Pasquale's grass and not overstep to the south. The interest of this area, beside the fact that it's on the Mediterranean, is that we can assume that institutions from different origins met there. Around 600 BC. We have the foundation of Marseille on the very eastern tip of my kind of potato here. And we have in the middle of it the Phocian or Massalian colony of Emporion that was created basically on the first quarter of the 6th century BC. Generally, it is assumed that this date, 600 BCE, was a turning point not only for the Greek but also for the local population. Here I will try to look at the other way and to focus on long-term institution and on permanency. So I will not focus on what changes after 600 BCE, but on what remains more or less permanent. A short introduction about the societies of this area. From the 12th century BC onward, we can see recomposition processes taking place, and settlement patterns will evolve and develop into a kind of varied fashions. You can have hill forts, you can have hamlets, sometimes heavily fortified, like here in Els Vilars. You can have elite mansions, isolated, and all these elements will coexist through time and coexist inside landscape with nuances from an area to another. Well, without going into detail, it should be noted that the range of possible settlement patterns is really broad. So you don't have to think of this area as a very homogeneous or uniform one. It has strong micro-regional pattern nuances, but I have no time to deal into that. And I think for my topic, so economic institution, I think they are more or less common to the whole area. By the end of the Bronze Age, I believe that the fundamental aspects of this society were already in place. The characteristic of the communities of this period can be summarized as follows. I think that demographic mass is fairly small, a few thousand people. For the bigger settlements, 2,000 or something of this size. But these communities have a hierarchy. They have a hierarchy, but a dynamic one, not a fixed one. Not some. In my opinion, it should be described as an hierarchical context, where competition makes that different people from time to time will occupy the upper part of the social order. Writing is known from the 5th century onward in this area for marking a language called the Iberian, we call the Iberian, but its use seems to be confined mainly to the private sphere. We do not have public writing as we can have in the Greek world, for instance. Coinage was known, of course, because it was practiced by the Greek colonies since the 6th century BC, but the practice of minting money was only exceptional until the end of the 3rd century BC in this area. And the end of the 3rd century BC is a very specific context for this region because it's a battlefield of the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthago. So small communities with hierarchical processes and limited practice of writing and coinage, it's not difficult, and many people have done that, to consider that these societies are as primitive. And this ancient reading grid continues to be applied in various forms today, I believe. And the idea, one of the general idea we have is that from the 7th century BC, these primitive societies, obviously, I do not make this term mine, but this society considered sometimes as primitive, gradually came into contact with population that used writing, namely the Greeks or the Punics or the Etruscans. And we have a process that makes us believe that local people will progressively adapt and adopt Greek, mainly Greek, because this is one we know better, economic institution. This is a major idea, in my opinion, in the proto-historiography, so the historiography about proto-history in the Western Mediterranean, that foreign trade was made according to Greek or Greek-like institutions until the Roman period. And the idea beyond that is that every economy in the ancient Mediterranean was indeed a market economy, where market was more or less effective, and the transfer of institution, mainly from the Greek world, as I told, would have improved market effectivity in the Western Mediterranean. This is an underlying idea we can see often. It's not overly stated, also because we often interpret this process much more in the cultural perspective than an economic one. But this is really what you can infer from the literature. What brings to this interpretation is that we have some markers of Greek institution, like coinage, as I told, like the use of writing for making economic documents that are later on adopted by the Iberians. But there are serious chronological or contextual discrepancies because it would take something like 300 years to the Iberian to adopt coinage, something like 200, 250 years to begin to use writing for the economic purposes. I think this, you can interpret you can interpret that fact in two perspectives. So, or you consider that local people have cognitive issues and so cannot adapt things after 200 years, or you consider that they choose not to adopt them for centuries, and this is more or less my interpretation of that. They didn't have any use of coinage until the very end of the 3rd century BCE. Another point that shows this importance, this central place, the centrality we give to Greek institutions, is a place of a concept that Alain Bresson knows well. It's the Emporion. Emporion in French, and the Emporion, which is taken after a Greek word, but has been adapted into some kind of context which is close to Polanyi, port of trade. So you have this idea that Greek economic tools are central, that Greek economic institutions for foreign trade like the Emporion play a central role. You have also the use of a very market-oriented vocabulary, market competition, relation between supply and demand, for instance, that gives the idea that local economy is kind of a market economy that ignores itself and has to become one. This idea, for me, it's a bit tainted with evolutionism or economic determinism. It is totally undeniable, and I won't do that, that between the archaic and classical eras, a system of impersonal, or I would say systemic trust developed in the Greek world, which was characterized by the establishment of formal institutions, granting a certain informational symmetry. So you have currency, you have metrology, for instance. You have also third-party conflict resolution with courts and tribunals, and Alain Bresson knows that much better than I do. And these institutions are, among other things, that lowering transaction costs and making the transaction more fluid. Italy will undoubtedly undergo similar process, albeit at a later date, and the Phoenician probably arrived in the West, in southern Spain, already bearing institutions of this type. So that Greek are bearers of this institutional framework is for me beyond doubt, even if I will discuss it further on. But in the Western Mediterranean, we are far away from the core of the Greek world, Greek institution. In the Western Mediterranean, I believe I've been adapted to the local context. In the littoral zone, you can find many goods from the Greek world, especially from the Greek colonial domain, but density of distribution of it is quite dense, and we tend to imagine very regular flows and fairly dense interaction. So we tend to imagine an area with many ships and many traders going around all year long. There are some documents who allow for discussing this idea. We know quite a lot of now letters or documents written on lead sheets that are often cited even in synthesis for addressing topics related with Greek trade. It's a practice writing documents in lead sheets like this, that it's also known in continental Greece, but also in the Black Sea. Yet, this practice is mainly known beside Attica, mainly known in peripheral areas of the Greek world. And as you can see, Languedoc and Catalonia plays a great role in this distribution. So these documents are, in my opinion, overrepresented in peripheral area. And the simplest explanation I can find for that is that it doesn't betray a density of traders. On the contrary, It's a practice typical of an environment where encounters and therefore the transmission of direct oral information is complicated. So you write it for transmitting it at a distance in time and space. One of these documents is or have been of peculiar interest to me, as it sheds light on the institutional functioning of Greek settlement, the first colony of Emporion I referred to before. This famous document has been found in Peshmao, which is a Nile fort dated from the occupation beginning in the 6th century BCE, and the document dates from the 5th century BCE. I won't go back in detail over the interpretation I proposed in 2016 already. Just to remind you two of the main points I developed at the time, this document is, in my opinion, a deposition and bear witness, shows the existence of institutions designed to resolve conflict, court of laws for short, in the Greek colonial world, and I think namely in Emporion. The structure of the document is not linear, as it is often the case with depositions. It describes the element in the order in which they came to the declarant's mind, and the knowledge of a common framework enables those accessing the document to put themselves, the events in order. And for me, this document refers to a transaction in which the only accounting unit was the cargo itself, because money is scarce, and it's tells of a world where loan allow for leveraging a small amount of money and refunding the loan after the ship has traveled back to his port. So this is a world where main traits of Greek economy are present, but I think they are adapted to function in a quite inhospitable context. We can also wonder how clear was the information available to transaction participants. It's difficult to estimate because we have only a partial view. We can only see that through the products made in the colonial world itself. For the purposes of this paper, I'm going to confine myself to a topic that Thibaut knows well, volumetric data. I first approached this issue in 2016. We made this graph, and this is, for instance, the distribution of Massalian amphora according to a scale of values, and you can see that there are concentration points here and there. We progressed a lot since then, mainly thanks to Thibaut. But I keep liking this representation because I think it gives kind of a sensation of what a trader could figure in his mind, actually. But what we can see here is that, this is a frequency distribution analysis of the volumetry of Massalian and Etruscan amphora made in the framework of the North Story program. And the graphic of the main with the metrological toolbox Thibaut developed. And we can see that the impression when we see the distribution is that production practices are regular enough to provide a good information about the quantities involved in a transaction. Not a very accurate one, but sufficiently good one. However, this information only concerned the good produced in the Greek or the Etruscan world, and Phoenician we tried also. It was quite more difficult, but it would allow for a trader at least to have a clear idea of the good he embarks in his ship before to leaving his port. So to sum up what I told about the colonial Greek institution of foreign trade, they are formalized institutions. They show that there is an effort to minimize informational asymmetry through the use of coinage or volumetry, at least as far as Greek, Etruscan, and probably Phoenician or Punic goods are concerned. And yeah, there is a possibility for possible third-party conflict resolutions. Money remains rare, I believe, as capital is. There is a low density of agents of trade, one south of the colonies, and Greek institutions of foreign trade are market-oriented and formal, but they are also adapted to the specific context of the Western Mediterranean. So, what about local institutions? What I can tell is that we do not find any formal marketplace. The trading space is not known. We do not know any control tools. We do not know formalized currency until very late in my period. We do not know any system of weight and scale for public use, and we know only a few for private context. I'm speaking the Thibault control. And on the other hand, we may have an indirect trace of formalization or formal institutions through metrology, because when making a research about Mayak between the 10th and the 8th century BC, we could, in a paper that is in preparation now, determine that pottery production is structured according to two volumetric units during the late Bronze Age, one on around 1048 milliliters, and during the early Iron Age, 1229 milliliters. So there are some traces of standardization, of volumetric standardization, which is strange that when we go further on time and focusing on containers that will be used for training purposes, we seem to lose this accuracy and we lose this metrology, which make me believe that this metrology was not related with trade. The absence of metrology it's not related with any technological limitation, because when they want, Iberian potters can do some pretty much accurate metrologies, but it appears only on Roman times. And I think they use technologies that already existed to make accurate metrological system, because there is an incitation from the Roman authority to do so. We also tried with Thibault to determine if ACK metal could be used as a currency, and we had a very good case study for that, which was the site of Mallieu, because we have ACK metal and we have also hints for weighing system based on the use of pebbles, but the result turned out to be negative, and we didn't find any regular pattern against behind the fragmentation of metal. So we have quite a strange picture of any where we cannot see any of the formal institution we normally associate with market economy. To find out where transaction took place, my opinion is that we need to follow the agent of the transaction, and we need to follow back the goods that are produced, and so try to see where they were made. And for most of my period, the places where good and productive activities were concentrated were houses inside the settlement, and were mainly elite houses, so the bigger inside the settlement. Technical activities localized there. It can be inside, it can be outside. It's often linked with open-air multi-purposes space, like here in Malvieu, where we could determine the coexistence of iron metallurgy, copper alloy metallurgy, bone treatment, textile activity on the very same space, which has been reconstructed by Marie Lefebvre. That way, the different colors show the different activity and show that the same space was a place for different activities through time. One of the clear association we have between elite residence and crafting comes from Spain, from Tossal Montaña, 6th century BC. We have traces for textile activity and for copper alloy metallurgy, which made me think that elite members were directly involved in crafting activities, and use it as a very tool for building and reivindicating their identity. And we have another direct confirmation of that in the funerary record with, and I am stepping towards the south now, with the so-called Goldsmith tomb, which actually should be called the elite tomb with goldsmith tool inside, because it has all the other markers that can be found in any other elite tomb in the same cemetery. So it's from the 4th century BC, with tools that are as old from as the 7th century BC. And in my opinion, it shows that craft were totally a part of the identity, probably collective, of the elite of this region. And one of the keys we have to interpret that is traces we have for directional trade, all of very specific and very complex object like this silver patera made in Tivissa and found in southern France in the land, who actually bears the name of probably the maker of the offer. So as for complex technical skill, I think they were mainly concentrated into the elite houses, and the product of the activity was used for feeding regional network, regional intra-elite networks. This network would actually probably connect them with quite a far distance, because in Malvieux we found a cage rattle, a pendant that has only convincing parallel into the Caucasus, which is a bit surprising, but not that much, because we know for many times now that in Sicily, people from the Languedoc could meet actually in some sanctuary people coming from the Caucasus, because we have objects coming from the Caucasus area and objects coming from the Languedoc. Sorry. Pardon. I guess so that the connection, well, the extreme, the far extremity of this network can be found beyond this object. These elite houses didn't only concentrate technical activity, they were also placed for storage, and this will remind something to Pierre, and storage for agricultural goods. So there are central places for technical activities, but also for farming and agro-pastoral activities. And my belief is that they were central places for that because they were concentrating goods and distributing them through don contre don, where they were working at an isonomic level, or through distribution processes when they were working on a vertical level. So, to sum up, in my opinion, don and contre don and redistribution seem to occupy a central place into the transactional framework. In other words, the more important transactions were non-market processes. I believe market transaction existed, but applied to local day-to-day economics. Most of the technical activities, even if very complex, were domestic-based, but based in elite houses, which suggests a direct involvement of the elite into production processes and technical processes. Don and contre-don transactions were probably horizontal and corresponded to directional trade, while redistribution was probably vertical. Both kind of transaction aimed at creating hierarchy within competitive patterns. Transaction probably took place mainly into the elite houses or their surrounding. In such framework, anonymity was not an objective, on the contrary. It was vital to be able to identify the partners of the transaction, but also the makers of the object. And this information was transmitted through object biography and probably also through performative events. So, for me, and to bring this presentation to a conclusion, for me, the central institution of local economy was debt, really, not credit. Sorry, an echo, but because, in my opinion, the debt was not the aim of the debt was that it could never be repaid. The aim of the debt was to create hierarchy and not interest, let's say. Indebting people was a mean for generating hierarchy into a dynamic, hierarchical, competitive system. And I think that Maya methodology should probably be interpreted in this perspective. In the framework of a funerary ritual, methodology allows for clarifying who is entitled to what and in what quantity. Because methodology can also support redistribution. It's not only a tool for market processes. And I believe that a Greek trader operating in this context had to adapt to a non-anonymous system aimed at generating debt. So it could create opportunity, because when you are a trader and you have someone in front of you who want to to make you own something to him, well, you could abuse of the situation. But I do not think the locals were naive. I do not think it at all, and I have some clues to show that they were not. They totally understood the logic of their counterparts, and I think that the bigger skill that was asked to a Greek trader of this time was his ability, cultural fluidity and cultural ability to insert himself in the local networks. Thank you for your attention.